Well, hello and welcome. My name is Roy Harriman, and I'm here with Jeff and Linda Schweig of Capital LiveScan. And we really want to welcome you to this webinar on background checks for youth workers in California. And we're discussing legislation passed last year and known popularly as AB 506, which contains new mandates for churches and organizations who engage volunteers and staff to work with children and youth. We're an insurance broker for churches and nonprofits, and we only serve churches and nonprofits. Our team includes a number of people who have worked in ministry. I'm one of them, and we really get it. So we connect you with property insurance and then a full range of liability insurance, not just talking about the slip and fall variety, but coverage that protects you really in this complicated, regulated, and litigated world that we live in. So I am joined today by Jeff and Linda Schweig of Capital LiveScan in Sacramento. Jeff and Linda, thank you for joining us. So we thank our webinar guests for joining us as well. We know you're really busy and you wouldn't be online with us right now if you didn't care about protecting kids. Without further ado, let me tell you a little bit about Jeff and Linda. They are the founders of Capital LiveScan, and I can't imagine two people who are more qualified to discuss this topic. Jeff's the president and founder. He's a retired police officer, including 5 years of his tenure spent as a sexual assault investigator. Linda is the CEO, and she's recently retired from the California Department of Justice as an assistant bureau chief. She did a lot of things there in her tenure, but some of it was providing oversight to the state's sex offender registry. So if you want to know more about them, you can review their bios on our website. But let's just suffice to say they are veteran criminal justice professionals, Jeff on the enforcement side and Linda on the administrative and legal side. They're also both devout people of faith. So Jeff and Linda, to get us started here, California already had a fingerprint database and a criminal background check system in place before this new bill passed and went into effect. Can you tell us what has changed and why we're talking about it right now?
Absolutely, Roy. So applicant background checks have been available for many decades in California for youth service organizations, but effective January 1st of 2022, pursuant to AB 506, before they were permissible, now they are mandated by California law, by statute. It's no longer a may, it is now a shall. Youth service organizations, if they meet specified criteria, they shall get a background check based on Penal Code Section 11105.3, a fingerprint check.
You know, AB 506 has kind of forced organizations into developing a culture of trying to protect those who can't protect themselves. You know, one of the reasons why Linda and I are so passionate in this workspace is that we both have seen the devastation to children, families, organizations, when they don't do everything they can to protect those who are most vulnerable. You know, none of us want that for ourselves or our organization. There's a church in our area here that they have early on developed this culture of children are our most valuable asset. And they fingerprint everybody. They go through volunteer packets. They vet everybody. You know, a lot of organizations feel, well, you know, that we're in a small community. We live in Mayberry. We know everybody. And, you know, we don't need to do this. I remember going to one organization and the management said, whenever we get a new person, we bring them into the office with us. We look them in the eye and we ask them questions. I feel pretty confident that they're okay, which I don't know about you, but
That's not a policy.
No.
That's right. Yeah, unless unless you're a Jedi, right? You know,
Right.
you have some kind of a clairvoyant supernatural powers. Yeah, your gut is not the way to go, nor does the law allow your gut to be your screening device. So a couple of excellent points. One, this option was available to churches and nonprofits. Now it's mandatory to use it. And this takes us beyond the realm of how we feel or our best efforts and makes it a little bit more objective. So that's an excellent point to clarify. So let me ask you both, anytime a new mandate comes down, particularly if it's a mandate for religious organizations, particularly since we've just experienced 2 to 3 years of continual mandates, it's easy to just shrug our shoulders and say, "Oh, brother, another mandate." So, but just looking at this on its own, without all that baggage, is this good news? Is this bad news, or is this a mixed bag for churches and other groups that work with children and youth? What's your perspective on that?
I think it's good news. I realize that, it's one more thing. Having been a part of volunteer organizations my whole life and being the president of different nonprofits and being involved in churches and all that kind of stuff, I get it. Everything that's mandated has a dollar figure. But having looked in the eyes of victims and the destruction that I've seen come from those who chose to not do everything they can, churches are extremely vulnerable because their doors are open. We want people to come to God. And so in most churches that I've been involved with, there's someone whose desk is piled high with all sorts of things they have to do because they're generally volunteer run, or if there's paid positions, they're the catch-all to everything. And here's one more thing we've got to do, one more thing we've got to do.
And let's talk a little bit about why it's a good thing. So first and foremost, it sets a standard. This new law sets a standard in California. And Jeff and I were talking about this, and this new law no longer allows you to do nothing. It sets a standard and says, you must do this. If you want to do more than this, you can do more than this, but no longer can you just do nothing and say, well, the law doesn't require me to do anything. And it lets me do it if I want to do it, but it doesn't require me to do it, but now it does. And the second reason that it's a good thing is that it's based on biometrics. This is not a background check based on a name or a social security number or any other number that someone may provide to you. It's based on biometrics. So the person that you are fingerprinting is actually that individual, and that
Fingerprints don't lie.
Right, they don't lie. It connects that individual to their past criminal history, because you're going to get their criminal history in California when you submit this information to DOJ. And it also connects them to future criminal history. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And it does that through something called the subsequent arrest process. And so it gets you their arrest and convictions and attempts on some convictions. It also lets you know whether someone is a sex offender in California. And not only are they a sex offender in California, it tells you if they're living in California now, if they committed a sex crime in any other state or in a federal or military court. You also get that type of information. The other thing that is good about this, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later too, is that the Department of Justice, the legislators, they waived the fee, the government fee for a fingerprint background check for nonprofits. So there is a fee involved to get the fingerprint done, but there are no government fees associated with this. So that is always a good thing when we are required to do something, that our legislators try to minimize the costs for organizations.
It's excellent to hear that along with the mandate also comes an incentive. And
right.
Let me just clarify one thing here. Looking at our chat, Nadine asks, does a live scan include checking sex offender lists? So let's just clarify that right now.
Yes, it does. And what it gives you, so it checks California's sex offender registry. So if someone is required to register in California, it will provide their registration status of a sex offender. That is for everyone that's required to register. So if you go on as a private individual, you can go on to you can search the national database to see if someone is a sex offender, right? Well, in the national database, every state only submits certain individuals that their state criteria allows the public to see. It does not give you, in California, we only submit about 65% of the registered sex offenders. When you do a fingerprint-based background check, you get 100% of the individuals that are required to register in California. And if they are living in California and they committed their sex crime in another state or in a federal or military court, you also get 100% of those.
But since this topic has come up just now, what is not necessarily included in the data that will come through the live scan check? In other
Well,
words, from other states.
Okay, so what's not included is crimes other than what is in Penal Code Section 290. You're not going to get, if someone committed a burglary in Ohio, you're not going to get that. You're going to get arrest and convictions and attempted crimes for specified crimes pursuant to California law. So for every background check that's done in California, depending on the organization, there's a different dissemination criteria. And for youth service organizations, the Welfare and Institution Code tells us what is disseminated. And so I'm not an attorney, so I tell organizations, you need to go look and see what the Welfare and Institution Code says. What do you get? But the status as a sex offender is included in all the dissemination criteria for every organization.
Well, that's excellent. And we appreciate the good questions. And it sounds like, Jeff and Linda, what you're saying is there is some information that you're guaranteed that you're going to get. If you want additional information, there are certainly other nationwide background databases that you could consider.
Right. So the FBI offers a criminal database, just like California. And California sends all their information, most of their information to the FBI. And so there is a federal background check, but that's an additional fee. They do not waive their government fees for nonprofits. That is an additional, that would be a $15 fee to get that information. And if organizations want to do that through our system, we can integrate that seamlessly into the background check.
Our churches and nonprofits out there joining us today, if they want more, they don't even necessarily have to, they don't have to set up a separate vendor. They can get more data through Capital Live Scan.
We can do all that.
That is a big help because it's hard enough to comply and let alone finding another resource. Okay.
But when these laws go into effect, so the legislators looked at the types of offenses that they believed that each organization would need to get dissemination information on. They looked at that, they contacted organizations, and then they put into place a codified laws that says, okay, for youth service organizations, this is what we're going to provide you. And in that is, and of course, is sex offenses. People are most worried about sex offenses, child abuse offenses. So those offenses are what makes up that dissemination criteria.
Very helpful. And it, and for the layperson out there, I'm definitely a layperson in this. It is more complicated than you would hope it would be as to what data is published where and why. But the bottom line is, and I'm not speaking as an attorney, but I'm just speaking as someone who doesn't want anyone to have an incident or a crime committed on their premises, is the more information, get all the information you reasonably can, is what we would counsel. So, well, excellent. Well, let's
get what information you can. And what generally predicates future behavior is past behavior. And so let's talk a little bit about that future behavior. So with the Department of Justice fingerprint background check, once you have, once an organization has ran a background check on an individual, and say that individual stays with your organization for 10 years or 20 years, if that individual goes out and is arrested for something, a month after they're fingerprinted, you're going to continue to get any arrest and conviction information from DOJ on that person's criminal behavior, as long as they're with your organization.
So most checks, public database checks, the second you get the result, that's how long it's good for. Where for some reason, California has not screwed this up yet, but they give you this future notification, and that's huge because, you incur this expense once,
Right.
which is quite a value when you think about it.
Because sometimes people aren't forthcoming if they get arrested or convicted of something. They may not share that information.
That's
with
right.
you. And this way, the person that your organization, person or persons that you have chosen to be your criminal offender record individual, that will be the one receiving the information from the Department of Justice, will receive that information.
I believe part of the responsibility of a church is their doors are always open. They want to bring in new people to God. And if I'm a sex offender and I come back as a sex offender when you fingerprint me, but the culture of the church is that we're protecting our children, you don't send me off. You hopefully help me succeed
Right.
in my journey.
Right. You put me in a position
Right. So
where I'm not around children.
right. So maybe I'm there at night cleaning up or something. Just same would go as if I had a history of embezzlement, you're not making me the fundraiser.
Right.
It's helpful to understand the dynamics that are in play, and that it is churches, we want to believe the best out of everyone, but you have a legal response, and then you have a pastoral response. So the legal response necessarily excludes definitely being convicted of crimes in the past. The pastoral response is to bring healing and hope for that person, but outside the context of that ministry, as you said. Well, let's move on here to the process, because I know this is a just what helps people is to understand, okay, how does this work? Not necessarily in excruciating detail, but the big picture. We use the example of I'm a pastor in Reading, and I just want to help kids understand the Bible, but now all of a sudden I've got this new challenge. Where do I start? What does it look like?
Right. So I'll do this. This is my hand reaching out. We're here to help you through this process. When I first started in this, I looked at it as, why does this feel like a punishment to do the right thing? I'm a volunteer, and they hand me this packet to fill out with all this written by lawyers. If you do this, this bad thing can happen. If you don't do this, this bad thing happens. By the time I'm done, I'm like, why am I volunteering to do this stuff? So I looked at it from that perspective, being that person. How can I help? How can I guide people? Because we're so busy in our lives, but now we're mandated to do this. So this is going to fall on someone's desk.
Right. And we're mandated to do it January 1st of 2022.
Yeah,
we're already behind the curve.
Yeah, it's already backwards. So years ago, I said, I will help people navigate this process, and I will not charge for this. It's ridiculous. So I know our contact information will come up there.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes me and someone from your organization about 20 minutes on the phone in front of a computer to go through the initial setup paperwork.
And so the Department of Justice requires organizations to complete a packet of information so organizations can be identified by the DOJ to receive information. We call it a query packet. And they can also get set up to have that information disseminated to them through the secure mailbox that the DOJ has. And so you have to fill out this paperwork, and it's taking about 10 weeks now. And so the first thing you want to do is reach out to us. We will walk you through that process. You get on a computer, we'll get on a computer, and we'll walk you through the query paperwork. It is available on the Office of the Attorney General's website under criminal histories. So you can take a look at it if you want, but it's easier to have someone that's done it like Jeff hundreds of times, and I have done it a number of times now as well. And we can walk you through that. You get that turned in, so you at least get the ball rolling. So that's the first thing you do. You reach out to us, you get your paperwork done, you complete your packet, and then you talk about within your organization, how do you want to do this? So we have a business model where it allows youth organizations to go through. We have a secure online portal where agents or organizations can use this portal where they register for their fingerprinting. Once you've got your Corey packet done and you've been approved to receive the background information, then we would work with you to get set up on this portal, and you could give out this link on your church's website for when people want to get fingerprinted. They go to this portal and they register, and they put in their information into this form. It's a DOJ form called the 8016, the BCIA 8016. They fill that out, they register, and then they can choose one of two ways. Your organization can choose, do we want to walk in? We have 600 sites throughout California, across the state, that you can walk into and get fingerprinted, like your local UPS store. You can find the ones that are closest to your house through our portal. Or you can say, no, we want to have Capital LifeScan come out and do an on-site event where we can get everyone fingerprinted on April 18th at our church. So we can work with you to decide a date and a time and a place if you would rather do it that way. So there's two ways to do it. Either you can walk into a site, that one of our authorized sites, or we can come out and we can do it for you at an on-site event. And there's different pricing for which model that you choose. So we work with organizations to get you from the very beginning step to the end. We train you on how to get into the mailbox. We train you on how to use our online portal. And then through our online portal, you'll also receive reports that your organization can have that says who's been fingerprinted in the last year for our organization, or who made an appointment but never showed up for the fingerprint.
So one of the issues is there's a couple laws in California. I think I'm sure I've got the number wrong. I think it's AB 801. It removed the time frame that organizations or individuals can be sued for sexual misconduct acts. And so what we looked at is, how do we help protect our organizations, our clients? One of those ways is to be able to have access for the data of defense. Because again, as volunteers, you've got that filing cabinet and you try to put everything in there, but sure as it is, the day is long, when you're required under stress to find that data, good luck finding it.
So our software provider keeps that information in a report. Then you can call us and say, hey, did Joe Smith ever get fingerprinted?
Right.
And we can look it up. Yes, he did. Here's where he went. This is the time. And here's the computer information relating back to.
It doesn't give you the results of that check.
Just says that they
got checked. Results are a little different, but just know that we are here to guide you through this process, start to finish, to be there through the whole thing. Like I said, it shouldn't be a punishment to do the right thing.
Right. And if there's a number of churches that are on this call today, and we start getting a lot of people that need to go through the ORI packet, we could set up times where we could do a Zoom too,
Yeah.
and just
Plug
walk
everybody
people
in.
through it at one time.
Yeah.
Because it's not difficult. It's just knowing what needs to be put in on the form, what needs to be included, and interpreting what that information is.
Let me ask you a practical question. You mentioned two options. It's good to know that there are 600 sites in which you can do the fingerprint, but you also mentioned that you have an option where you'll go out and essentially help to host an event. And I'm not trying to steer people one way or the other. Sincere question is there any benefit to having an on-site event? Does that maybe help lower stress?
Yes.
or
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
both
there's a
are-
couple benefits.
That is a good
And
point.
it's cheaper. So if you use the online portal and only go into the walk-in site, it's $25 a person. If we come out and we can do everyone at one time, then it's $20 a person. And everybody still goes through the portal and they register there, but we will talk with you, your organization, about which model that some churches or organizations, they do both. They may host a on-site event and say they have 100 people in their church and 80 people can make it. then they still have 20% that were sick or they were on vacation or whatever. Then the rest of them can go to the, they can walk into a location nearest them, but we can do it very quickly. We can get people together. They're, maybe you have a training day at your church, or I don't know, a cleanup day that you want, and you bring all your volunteers together. We can go there, set up in the back, and have people just walk back and get fingerprinted, and they're done in a few minutes, and each person, and then they're all done. They don't have to go anywhere. They don't have to do anything. And the church, the organization, saves that money, or the individual saves that money, whoever you decide is going to be paying for that. And we also allow several payment options where organizations, they can buy prepaid codes and they can give those to their members. And if you decide that, oh, we're going to pick up this cost as an organization, or the individual can pay online with a credit card if they want to, or the church can put a credit card on file and will bill you for it after the on-site event. So you have two different models to choose from, and then you have several payment options to choose from as well.
So to answer your specific question, Roy, I can only imagine what it felt like for the first Catholic priest after all that whole situation came out, walking into the police station to get a fingerprint done because it was mandated for them, where, even if I'm completely innocent, I'm former law enforcement. I still get a level of anxiety when the police car pulls up behind me. I can't help it. And I didn't do anything wrong. So this way, we're basically coming to your house, so to speak, your church, and fingerprinting in a very casual basis. And everybody around you is getting done the same thing. So you're not an oddity.
All right, let me ask one clarifying question. I have not seen it yet in the chat, but I could see that this would be something that would reasonably come up. So this isn't a question about which organizations this applies to, because that was discussed in the webinar we had last week, which will be posted on our website. So, but the question is, just given the understanding that it does apply to churches and nonprofits that work with children and youth, the people that need the fingerprint background check verification, are they exclusively people within those organizations who work with children and youth, or is it everyone in the organization, irrespective of whether they work with children and youth?
Well, I think, that's a legal question. And so I'm not licensed to practice law in the state of California. The only thing I would say is it goes back to that culture that I always tell organizations, if you're going to have a policy, it's like within our organization, Linda gives us the guidance. She's the example of how the organization top to bottom is run, what our value system is. And so, our policy is across the board, this is what we'll do. But, each organization has
to set that policy and talk to their legal counsel.
You base risk versus reward kind of thing, and you decide what that looks like. I saved $25. Was it worth this?
Right.
As a risk factor.
Right. We can tell you that some organizations do everyone, and some don't.
Right.
But each organization has to set their own policy and, talk to their legal counsel about what are we going to do? How are we going to mitigate our risk?
Right. Because remember, especially in organizations like a church, you're so volunteer driven. And if you see me with the pastor and now I'm at this function, now there's almost an implied position of authority there, right? That I have my level of responsibility and trust is a little bit higher than the person I never see talking to the pastor, who's never a part of this overnight trip or never doing this. So, it's hard. You can't protect yourself from everything all the time. But again, if the one thing I've seen that is easier is developing that culture. And again, the biggest thing is if you have a policy, it's a policy. It's not a suggestion.
Right.
And so I'm looking at some of the chats that are going across the screen. Someone said they looked at the website on Capital LiveScan for a location in Riverside and they didn't see one. So those are just, when you go to our website, you see the sites that are affiliated directly through Capital LiveScan. So the 600 sites are affiliated through our network. So that is a different website. So what we would do, how that works is once an organization receives their ORI package, then we work with our software provider to build a link for your organization. We provide you with that link, you place it on your website, and then your organization goes directly into our network portal. And that portal is where you get access. You put in your address and it'll give you those 600 sites. You put in your address, it'll give you the ones that are closest to your address, but that's where the 600 sites are. If you go to our website though, you only see the ones where we have direct control of them. These other,
Those are our
systems that we purchase and put in there, but it's the same thing. It's just that we don't own the system, but we have a network that are available with 600 sites statewide, and they're everywhere throughout the state.
That's good because let's see. Charles asked. He said, "Hey, I'm in Riverside County," and so
Yes,
it's not
I saw that.
no one in order to work with the benefit of your expertise and services. You can be anywhere in California. You don't have to be
anywhere in California.
You're
And
physically located in Sacramento, but no one else has to be.
right. And for our mobile on-sites, what we try to do, we do have a minimum, but we try to work with organizations where we can, maybe do 3 or 4 mobiles in a day and, look at the geography and stack them up where they're geographically located. So we can do 3 or 4 in a day so we can get to smaller organizations.
Yes, that's excellent information. And so, yeah, it's good to know that the process is certainly not tied to geography and you can steer people in the right direction, whether they're up in Modoc or down in,
Right.
Palm Desert or wherever they're at. So I want to just divert just very momentarily, and I'm not going to change our topic, but I do want to talk about the insurance component of this. And the first and foremost thing to do from our perspective at Ministry Pacific is to do what Jeff and Linda are saying. And that is to get screened. Beyond that, train volunteers. It's not a one and done thing. The training people how to work with children, safeguards, it's a continual process. It's not like, yeah, I did that in 2019. We're continually learning and growing. New people are coming. There's a lot of fluidity in our volunteer staff. In addition to that, you need to have, as Jeff mentioned, clear written policies that direct how volunteers and staff work with children. And so those things are the first line of defense. If you need more information about that, we have resources about that on our website. In addition, we recommend that churches and nonprofit organizations at least consider what's called sexual misconduct liability insurance. Now, why? Because you don't have to do anything wrong to be sued or to be accused, but you do have to defend yourself. And the price of doing that could bankrupt many churches and nonprofit organizations. So that's what sexual misconduct liability insurance is about. It's about allowing yourself to access your insurance to have resources in the event that you are accused of sexual misconduct. We hope you never are, and we hope you never have to use it, but we want to let you know that that is an option for you. So let's go back to LiveScan fingerprinting. And Linda, you've alluded to this. Can you clarify again, how much does this process cost?
Okay, so there is no government fee. There's no government fee for the background check. That is waived by the government. That would normally be $32. If you to go through our business model where you want to walk into one of the locations in California, that's $25 a person. If you have us come out and do a mobile on-site event, it's $20 a person. And I can see some of the chats coming through, what's your minimum? And so it depends on what's our minimum is, where are you located? maybe we get a couple churches to come to one spot? And how long it will take us to do it. And so generally we try to look at all those factors before we give out a minimum. That's why we say, give us a call. We have one of our employees, his job is solely to coordinate these mobile events. And we can, depending on the size of the event, we can send one or more texts. We have sent 3 or 4 texts if we have to, depending on the size. We can do in a day. Right now we're doing several hundred, up to 500 in a day, like a 4-hour event. We can do that with sending a couple texts to give you guys an idea. But we can't give you an exact what our minimum is until we get some details from, where, are you located in Imperial County, so then our minimum may be different. We may need a few more people there to make it feasible for us to be able to travel down there. But if we can have a church that is in Riverside and then do one in Imperial and things like that, then that also would affect the minimum.
Yeah, that's helpful because your alternative is to establish an extremely high minimum that may not be relevant to this particular group. So yeah, it's good just to call and get the information.
We've done that where we've set it so high and then they say, oh, well, we need you to, well, let's see what we can do. What can we work out for you? If we can stop along the way and do another one, then we can get down to that number.
Right, because our client base is so large, we can be flexible on those things. The other thing is I love, we did some events down in Bakersfield in that area where the churches got together. They had a Sunday after church. They had a fellowship, food. It was a barbecue and all that. And we got together. Probably there was 20 churches, I think. It was just a great event. Just that community feel to it. And they were all doing the right thing, and we got to be a part of that. And because of that, we did it on site, and it wasn't a punishment because, the other thing about using our online portal, what's nice is when you register, it includes an email. So it sends you an email saying, hey, you have an appointment to get fingerprinted on this date at this location. Here's the information. And so it kind of reminds you, because I always say, currently the process is you get handed a form and the person in charge of that says, go get fingerprinted. So you Google fingerprinting and you try to find someplace and you show up and there's a line of 50 people standing there and you don't have one piece of data right, or you didn't have an appointment or some issue. And then, they say, bring a copy of this form back. Well, you set it down somewhere, but you can't find that form. And the other thing is that these locations, you're handing them basically your whole identity on this form. Our system is all electronic. It's encrypted to FBI standards. So all your data is safe there. So you're not walking into a form. You're walking in with your form. There's a code on the front of on your phone. The operator scans it, and all your data is uploaded securely into our system. And the data is correct. Your social security is correct because I know my social security number. And Linda always says, whenever a human being's involved, there always has to be some acceptable error rate. I may reverse a 3 and a 2, and now your social security is wrong, or I put in your date of birth wrong. One of the things I hear all the time is, well, my cousin used my identity. So and he's a criminal. And if I get fingerprinted, my name will pop up. The thing about fingerprints, it doesn't care what, honestly, you could say I'm Mickey Mouse and get fingerprinted. And all it does is create an alias for you. But if you have criminal history, it comes back. It may come back as Mickey Mouse, but it comes back, you're Mickey Mouse. Because when you get to the live scan location, they verify your identity with a government issued valid photo ID. So Jeff is Jeff, and my fingerprints are always Jeff.
Excellent.
They're not my twin. They're not anybody else.
Excellent. Well, one thing you brought up, and I think pastors, church leaders, lay leaders, Jeff had an excellent allusion to how this process can be presented. So the option he just described was a barbecue, food, churches came together. So in a sense, it's a fingerprinting party, right? It
Right.
lowers the anxiety. We're all in this together. We get to be around people we want to see, and so that's one way that we can set the tone for this, because it is a leadership issue. So let me ask you all one other question before we look at a couple of texts, and that is, again, everybody comes at this from a different perspective given their background and notions and views of political system and views of the world. So one way that this could be presented, and I've seen it discussed this way, is, you know what, say, I'm the pastor, you know what, Big Brother did it to us again. We've all got to pay to get our fingerprints done. I don't want to do it, but we're between a rock and a hard place and we're going to have it. Now, obviously, that kind of introduction is not going to motivate people. Well, what do you suggest? What is the way to say, hey, look, this is what's before us. This is what we need to do.
Well, one of the things believe me, although I was in law enforcement and government agency, I'm a why guy. I always ask why. I'm not a sheeple. I don't just run towards a cliff because everybody's running there. I need to know why I have to do this. And as much as it's protecting the organization, it's protecting me as a volunteer. I can say, this is the culture we've created in our organization, that we value our volunteers and we value keeping our kids safe. And so I can't, if something happens and my brain snaps and I go off the rails of decency, fingerprints are not going to stop that. But if my policy, my culture within my organization says, this is what we do all the time, it kind of empowers me as a volunteer. They care enough that I've been vetted through this organization, that it rises the level of expectation of who I am as a human being. And it kind of gives you that level of trust and maybe a little bit of protection,
And we look at it, excuse me, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for churches to have another way to protect their most vulnerable individuals. And now we have the authority to do that. It's the opportunity and the authority.
That in some ways, if we look at it correctly, could make it easier for us to make that ask, is that, hey, this is what California law requires. It's just, it's not an option. If you don't want to do it, you got to go talk to the police, not me. So, yeah, that's excellent. I think the leadership and the communication is going to make all the difference in how people can respond to, oh, I should be afraid of this, versus this is an opportunity for us to further protect our children. And a lot of work is involved here, but I would like to share a parallel from a church security training seminars that we've been through. We're hosting one of those in May, and that is, if one of the leaders, Strategos International, shared, hey, if you do a great deal of work and develop an excellent security team and all kinds of security protocols, lockdown protocols, we still hope nothing happens at your church. And we hope you never have to use our training, right? So it's the effort is worth it, even if it just gives you, particularly pastors and leaders, if it gives you peace of mind, as much as you can have it, that that as best as you could help, the right people are in the right places and the wrong people are not. And then you can be freed up to do other things. So a couple of questions from the chat room. Thank you for the excellent questions. And then we'll close out, because I want to close out on time. One question was, well, what about if we rent our facility to a group that is not following these protocols? What are we liable for? So that's actually more of an insurance related question. And so what we would encourage you to do is, if whether you're a customer with Ministry Pacific or someone else, check on your level of coverage and see how it pertains to groups that rent, and whether it's this issue or any number of issues. I just saw this morning that a referee at a youth sports event at a church was beaten up by about 10 people because of a call that he made during the game. Well, it wasn't the people at the church, but the church did rent it to those people. So there are going to be a lot of issues that are going to be insurance contingent. So make sure you have what you need to cover people who use your facility. That would be where I'd go with that.
Just want to really stress the point is that if you have any question whether things apply to you, I would always err on the side of yes, it does. So I'm gonna be cautious, because the last thing you want to do is be sitting, civil deposition saying, no, I didn't, I can split hairs and say, no, I only worked this amount because this wasn't really counted as volunteer hours or whatever. I always err on the side of caution, that these laws were designed to cover.
To solve a problem.
Right. And there's a reason for it. And believe me, there are plenty of attorneys sitting there. All you got to do is stay up late at night and see how many different attorneys are advertising, that
Take advantage of church organizations that decide not to do this.
And the
Right.
deeper the pocket, the deeper the incentive.
And worse than the attorney is so the something, of course, happening to a kid
Right.
or an
Right,
adult. So,
absolutely, yes.
well, Jeff and Linda, this is excellent information, so helpful in clarifying what could be a complex process. And I think really that's, as we communicated about this webinar, we try to share that you're going to make a complex process simple. And I believe you've done that. And what I want
That's
to
our goal.
encourage, there's a lot of excellent questions that we didn't get to. So what I want to encourage everybody who's been a part of this is, don't let this be the end of the dialogue. Let this be the beginning. Whether you need to talk to Jeff and Linda, or whether you need to talk to Ministry Pacific about your coverage, let this spur a conversation that leads towards protection and more effective ministry in your congregation. And with that said, we will let you all go. Thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.